Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
Alive so far, which is okay. That is my ambition, to stay alive. I kind of worsen my condition by taking a 4-hour class for the military officers at College of Air Warfare. I mean, I did it online, but 4 hours I took that class and it made things worse.
Okay.
Okay, I think we can get going because we're running out of time. We had finished with Thomas Hobbes, and now we have to start with John Locke. Well, there are two things that John Locke is very well known for. One thing that he is well known for is the whole idea of classical liberalism. But at the same time, he is also well known for at the same time, he is also well known for being a political economist. And a third thing, which people don't discuss much when they talk about John Locke, is that he is responsible for what we call the foundations that were laid by him for the birth of positivism and empiricism. Now, what I propose to do is, I have done a bit of this with you before. I have done this. Don't. I have no. So if I have done this thing about his essay concerning understanding, so I'll quickly go through that once again, the essay concerning human understanding, which turned the world upside down in terms of how people looked at knowledge. till then, in some form or the other, people believed in the, what do we say, they believed in the idea that knowledge was somehow inborn, and that we didn't have to search for knowledge outside of ourselves. This idea pervades through time from the Greek period right through the Roman period and even the Christian period. And in fact, the Christian period would say that all you need to do if you want to know is read the Bible or go and listen to a sermon in a church, and lo and behold, you have this whole thing in front of you. But the other thing that people never tried till John Locke was the understanding that the world is constituted by things. Okay, till then it was all universe, one verse and all that. But with him, we have this idea that the world is constituted by multiple things, and that these things are outside of us. Among all these multiple things that are there, then, we are also objects, if you like, that exist in this world. So, for him, I had told you that the two important concepts that facilitate our understanding of this world, which is external to us, and in which we exist, is tractable or knowable because of two particular qualities. One particular quality is that which is sense perception, the use of the five senses to internalize data from the outside world. And then the second quality, which is essentially called cognition. Now, sense perception without cognition makes absolutely no sense, because you have five senses that are simultaneously sending data. Okay, five senses that are simultaneously sending data to the brain and helping the brain internalize the external world. But if the brain was not capable of cognition, then this data that is going into the brain would make absolutely no sense at all. So if the data has to make any sense, then it is necessary that we have the cognitive capability. So actually, cognitive capability is something that takes a bit of time to explain, and that is something we don't really have, and we don't really need that so much. Now, just understand cognition as the ability of keeping the data that has come into the brain from the various senses separate. It keeps it separate. It doesn't mix the data. It keeps the data separate, but it is something, it ends up building one clear picture of how we understand the world. That is what cognition does. It doesn't combine the data that has come in through the senses, right? What it does is that it keeps the data separate, but it also ensures that this disparate data is made sense of in one picture frame, if you like. Okay, that is what the function of cognition is. So while we don't really pay too much attention to the essay concerning human understanding, we definitely need to remember that, what should I say, that the essay is a seminal work, and it paved the way for um, what do we say? It can pave the way, it did pave the way for the emergence of positivism and empiricism. So in that sense, it is pretty important. Now, the other work that is of direct consequence to us, and I say direct consequence to us in the context of the syllabus that we have, where we are going to study John Locke as a social contractualist. If you look at this particular dimension of Locke, that is represented in another book, which is actually called Two Treatises on Government. That is the name of the book. And as you can see, there are two treatises. The first part is the first treatise, and the second is the second treatise. Now, the first part is something that John Locke wrote against the British philosopher Robert the British philosopher Robert Filmer. Now, George Sabine, in his commentary on John Locke, says that John Locke was making a very big mistake in not condemning Thomas Hobbes and choosing to condemn who can he should have basically he should have condemned Thomas Hobbes and not Robert Filmer. The reason that George Sabine gives for condemning Thomas Hobbes is that he says what we find in Thomas Hobbes is nothing but illogic. Thomas Hobbes is so full of illogic. I have given you that argument while we were doing Hobbes, so I'm not going to repeat those arguments that people like Sabine, Leo Strauss, all these people, and well, the thing is that he basically believes that he should have criticized the illogic of Hobbesian thought, especially the state of nature. He should have rubbished it, he says. But instead of Hobbes, he chose to attack Robert Filmer. And this is something that mystifies George Sabine. Well, truth to speak, there is nothing to rubbish in Hobbes, and there is plenty to rubbish in Filmer. So Locke, being the astute thinker that he is, makes sure that there is the rubbishing of the correct person and not the wrong person. So let's first get to the question of why is he rubbishing Robert Filmer? he is rubbishing Robert Filmer because Robert Filmer is advocating the divine right theory of kingship. Okay, he is advocating the divine right theory of kingship, which, for very obvious reasons, is not acceptable to John Locke. Now, why isn't he rubbishing Thomas Hobbes? He won't rubbish Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes is the one who laid the foundations for John Locke's thought. The idea of a social contract, the idea of the state of nature, that experimentalism, all those things are inherited by uh, um, John Locke, and it is through the inheritance of all these different things which were used experimentally by Hobbes. Locke is able to build his own notion of a social contract. So let us try and see what is the debt that, I'm sorry, I'm in a lot of pain. Let us see what is the debt that Locke has to Hobbes. Okay. This is the main agenda of Locke. The main agenda of Locke is individualism and the defense of private property. And what Hobbes has done, Hobbes's writing Hobbes's social contract is half the work done for John Locke. How? Because Hobbes has introduced an idea which otherwise would have to be constructed by Locke himself. So Hobbes has put in place all the essential ingredients of individualism. He has put in all the essentials of individualism. He's put them in the right place. It is now up to in more ways than one, Hobbes is the godfather of John Locke. So why would he rubbish him? In fact, he learned from Hobbes's experience that it is not a good idea to take on a problem squarely by approaching it from the front. You see a problem, you don't go and take on that problem. You don't. Okay, so um, You don't go on and squarely meet that problem face on. What Hobbes is doing is to take on the, not Hobbes, sorry. So this is basically what uh, John Locke does. He uses the liberal method of surmounting to deal with opposition to his ideas. So you can ask yourself, what is the liberal method of surmounting? The liberal method nobody likes to be told to their face that they are wrong. If somebody tells someone that you're wrong, then it pricks the ego of the person concerned. So, what is it that we are looking at? We are looking at a method which is truly liberal in the sense that it is something that tolerates opposition. Locke will listen to his opponents completely. He will not disagree with them straight away. He will agree. He will agree with the premises of the criticism that is being leveled against him, but he will go on. He will go on to basically say that, look, your premises are absolutely right. What you're trying to say is perfectly all right. But the conclusions that you're drawing from the premises are not consistent with the premises. That is the method of liberal, or that is a liberal method of surmounting opposition. Opponent is told so he says there is an internal inconsistency in the premises that you are laying out. So let's not talk abstractly. Let's get straight to the argument of how Locke uses this in his social contract, and how this is something which is, what should I say? This is something that is not uh, what you should be deriving from your conclusions. So for that, let's go to the second treatise on government, which is where, like Hobbes, Locke also talks about a state of nature, a social contract, the emergence of a sovereign, and a state. But this is all done very, very differently, completely differently from Hobbes. It's done very differently. Locke realized that there were still enough Christians who believed in God, who believed in creationism, who believed in the idea that nature's bounty was for everyone to share. He saw that there were a number of people who believed in that particular idea. So, what you see, therefore, is that he makes a different start. He says, there is a state of nature, but unlike in the case of Hobbes, it is not something which is a war of all against all. The state it's a picture of harmony. Everything that is in the, I'll put it as O, is something that belongs equally to all. Locke says there are two stages in his state of nature. In the first stage, there is, or rather there are, limitations that are laid out on the individuals in the state of nature. What are these limitations? The limitations spoilage limitation, sufficiency limitation, and labor limitations. So these are what you find in the state of nature, the first stage of the state of nature. Man is rational, so he understands these limitations placed on him. So what are these? What are these limitations, and what do they do? Now he says people, there is some kind of, in the state of nature itself, so he differs with Hobbes here. Says there's some kind of rudimentary, it's not a properly organized society. But since human beings are rational and they understand these limitations, these have to be understood as being rudimentary kind of society, there being a rudimentary kind of society. Otherwise, they wouldn't understand that these are limitations and we have to follow these limitations. So how do we follow these limitations is the question. He says man's rationality tells him that he should not take from nature more than what he requires, because taking more than what he requires will actually make him spoil things in nature, and he does not have the right. He already is talking about rights. He does not have the right to spoil things. So man here meaning the rudimentary society, understands that he has a right over something that exists in nature, but does not have the right to spoil it. So let's say I gave you the example once before of a fruit called apple, and so if you are feeling hungry, you see an apple tree and there are apples. These apples are not forbidden. You can eat them. But if your hunger has been satiated by 2 apples, then you should not look for more. You should not look for more. You should simply say, okay, my hunger has been satiated or satisfied. I don't need any more, because if I take something and I don't eat it, it'll spoil. And I do not have the right to spoil things. So contrast this with the rights in Hobbes. The rights in Hobbes are unlimited. There are no limits on the natural rights that exist within a society, within the state of nature. And therefore people are quarreling over things. But Locke is building a totally different picture. Even in the state of nature, because of the existence of some kind of a rudimentary society, man is responsible. Man is responsible, and this responsibility is what makes him not take more than what he requires. So, because if he takes more than what he requires, it can spoil the thing. So, while you have a right to things in nature to satisfy your needs, you don't have the right to take things from nature and spoil them. This is where you see the divergence between Hobbes and Locke. Okay, this is where we see the divergence between Hobbes and Locke. Now, from this follows the sufficiency limitation. If you take more than what you need, then someone else will be deprived of what they require. So if you can satiate your hunger with a couple of apples, and you decide to take if you decide to take whatever is left, if you decide to take more than 2 apples, then not only are you spoiling it, you are also taking more than what you require, which may deprive another person of what he or she requires. So that is what Hobbes says. So that for Hobbes is a reason not to take more than you should, because you have a responsibility. See, this is already coming in the first stage of the state of nature. There's a limitation on rights, and there are duties that you have to fellow human beings. And the duty is to ensure that the fellow human being gets what he basically wants, and not, what should I say, and not the deprivation of someone. So this is the sufficiency limitation. Now the cunning of Locke can be seen in the state of nature itself. Locke floats this idea that if you put your effort into something which is a part of nature, because of the effort that you have put in, that thing into which you have put your effort becomes yours. It's your property. So If you have climbed a tree to pluck a fruit, that fruit is yours. It is yours because of the fact that you have actually climbed that tree, put in that effort to pluck a fruit or fruits, so they become yours because you have expended your energy. You have expended your energy into something which is in nature. But since you expended your energy into it, it becomes an extension of you. And when it becomes an extension of you, it is your private property. So you see, in the very first stage of the state of nature, Locke is saying there is private property, but the limitations exist. The labor limitation also exists. Why? Because somebody maybe has the ability to work more, work harder than the others, work a lot more quickly, in which case he'll end up with a lot more. So if he ends up with a lot more, then immediately the spoilage and the sufficiency limitations kick in. So you have to assume that there is also a labor limitation. Even if you can do something, and you don't, and that might mean that you have more, you cannot do it because the spoilage and the sufficiency limitations come. So the first stage no, just let's say equality and leave it there. So the first stage of the state of nature is one of relative equality. So if you look at this now, if you take a look at the state of nature, he says that while this may be egalitarian, it nevertheless impedes generation of social wealth. All this in the state of nature. That is the beauty of Locke. all these are in the state of nature. It impedes the generation of wealth. So people realize this. People realize this and they in the state of nature itself, people are introducing money and what has happened here? Well, it seems like it doesn't want to. So the introduction oh no, I knew when I switched off that, when I closed that toolbar that I was doing something epically stupid. Oh, all right. We get a second page. Wonderful. This is great. But only thing is we don't get to use it. Well, I have ruined it. So just let me explain this part to you without any more writing. Yeah, Jesus Christ. I should save my experiments. I'm a technomoron. I don't know why I decided to see what will happen if I close that bar. My name is here. Why is it showing? Anyway, um, so they decide to introduce money because it is these limitations are becoming a limitation uh, on generation of social wealth. So they decide to introduce money, and when they introduce money, they move into the second stage of the state of nature. They move into the second stage of state of nature. Now, in those days, money was metal. And if you look at the currencies, if you look at the currencies, what am I saying? Currencies. The currency of um, England, it's all in weight, okay? Pound, ingot. Now they don't have ingots. At one time they had ingots and pounds and even shilling, farthing, all these penny, all these were metal. Okay, so their weight, the weight of the metal was what gave the value to the currency. So Locke decides that he is going to introduce money in the second stage of the state of nature. In fact, by introducing money, he is creating the second stage of the state of nature. What is the significance of the introduction of money? As I said, it is metal, and since it is metal, it does not, it basically does not spoil. It does not spoil. So once you introduce money into the state of nature, in the second stage of the state of nature, you have the removal of all the limitations, all three limitations: the spoilage limitation, the sufficiency limitation, and the labor limitation. Okay, you have the removal of all these. How? Let's start with the labor limitation. Once that is removed, what you can do is you can work harder. Okay, you can work harder, and by working harder, you can take more out of nature, but it doesn't have to spoil. It doesn't have to spoil, because the excess that you now have, you can convert it into money, which is metal. So if I need 2 apples and I pick up 6, if I pick up 6, then I can sell 4 for money. I'll eat my 2 apples and I get some money. Same thing for sufficiency. Those who need things can buy from those who have more than what they require. So sufficiency limitation is no longer there. The labor limitation, I told you, is the first to go. So now people are working harder. People are working much, much harder than they would otherwise work. Now, because of the removal of all the limitations. So he says the generation of social wealth goes up. It goes up by leaps and bounds, is what he says. Because now there is no such thing as a limitation. So people are going to work harder, make money. That is how it is in the second stage of this, the state of nature. Okay. Now you have natural rights, but your duties are minimized. Your rights are maximized, but your duties are minimized. So what Locke is actually doing is that he is creating conditions. Okay, he's creating conditions wherein he's talking about a capitalist society in the state of nature itself. So his state of nature is nothing like the Hobbesian state of nature. His state of nature is a picture of harmony. In the second stage, he says inequalities do come into being. Okay? He says inequalities do come into being, but what he also says is that these inequalities are not to be understood as leading to a loss of wealth by some. So if you, let us say, take three individuals, A, B, and C, in the first stage of the state of nature, if you put it like this, okay, this finger shows this. This shows the upper limit because of the existence of the three limitations. This is the upper limit. One cannot rise above this. So let's put a value to it. Okay, the numerical value that you put to this is, let us say, this is A and he has 20. 20 is his whatever, he has the value of that. Then you have the second level. This is this. Let me come closer. This is the upper limit. This is 20. This is B. He has 10. And this right below is 5. C. A 20, B 10, and C 5. So there is relative equality. The distance between the upper level and the lower level, the difference, sorry, not distance, is only 15. It's only 15. So it is a situation of relative equality. Now, once you've removed the limitations, okay, the upper limit is this, the lower limit is this. The distance between this, that is A, and this is C, this has grown. So you'll say there is greater inequality here. But Locke will humbly disagree with you. He'll humbly disagree with you and tell you, you are looking at the wrong picture. what you're looking at is not the right picture. That is the wrong picture. Don't look at this. Don't look at this. Now let's ascribe numerical values. The upper limit is now 100. Is now 100, the upper limit, which is A. There's no limit. A has now amassed 100. He might amass even more. And this is the middle, which is B, who's got 50. And right at the bottom, you have C, who has 20. Those are the ascriptions done arbitrarily, but I'm doing that to serve a purpose. So now Hobbes says, don't look at this picture. Please look at this picture vis-a-vis this picture. How much is C getting here? 5. C is getting 5. How much is he getting here? He's getting 20. So while the difference between the top and the bottom may have increased, the bottom itself has risen to the level of what was the top in the first stage of the state of nature. The top there was 20. Now the bottom is 20. So C, who is the bottom, is much better off in the second stage of the state of nature. He's much better off in the second stage of the state of nature than he is or than he was in the first stage of the state of nature. So that is the reason why there is no one state of nature. In Locke, there are 2 states. There are 2 stages of the state of nature. The first is all very Christian. What God has given belongs equally to all those things. No hurting the Christians, no hurting their religious sentiments. But while agreeing with the Christians, is slipping in these natural rights. And in that natural rights is the right to private property. Please see that it's not something that he says is the private right to private property is not something that is coming in after the social contract. It's there in the very first stage of the state of nature. There is private property there. So he's talking a language which is very Christian. but he has brought in natural rights. So what is the significance of that? The significance of that is that Locke is preparing people essentially to accept private property, to say that a capitalist society is better than an older society because you're generating greater social wealth. So you might ask that how is it possible for us to deduce that the society that he's talking about is a capitalist society? I don't want to start an argument now. The clock says 10:35. If I start, then I'll go on. Yesterday, I told you I was speaking to those military officers. Chat. What was the last day for submitting your
Yesterday we were supposed to start writing 31st, I think, sir. By 31st we need to submit.
by 31st you need to submit? How can one correct for 1 mark? It's 10 questions, right? What is the form?
Yes, sir. 10 questions. We need to choose 5 and write for 1 mark.
For 1 mark. Amazing. I'm so amazed that I'm drumstick. 10 questions.
Did you send, sir, the questions to Anita, ma'am? To post in the group?
I didn't. She didn't tell me about it. And I have been not very well. So this thing just went out of my mind. I'll send them today. Okay. I'll send them to Anita. And I'll ask her to send them to you. How much can you write for her? For 1 mark? This is amazing. 1 mark questions. How does one correct this? How does one ask questions? Okay, I'll put them out by today. Send them out. Don't worry what is there to write for 1 mark. So
yes,
it'll be a fairly straightforward exercise. So let's not worry about it.
Yes, sir.
Mm.
And sir, regarding seminar, should we wait for any other further official thing, or can we start choosing topic and writing? Because again, if some things change.
Yes, they can.
Mm.
They can. So when are your seminars supposed to be?
11th, sir, 11th August. After the last working day.
Okay. All right. Okay, then I'll start writing something. Just start writing something. Or wait for 2-3 days and start
Yes, sir.
writing. Yeah.
Yes.
Wait for 2-3 days, and if no directive comes, start writing. And what you may have written for your assignments, you can make that a seminar presentation.
Oh, yes, actually, that's the idea. Because anyhow, we wrote, I wrote at least 10 plus pages.
Yeah, that's good enough.
Yeah.
That's good enough. That's good enough. People don't sit and write again. If you have those written documents, please go ahead and please go ahead and present them as your seminar presentations. And yeah, I actually wanted to take a class this evening, but I am not able to sit. I'm in a hell of a lot of pain. And so today I won't take a class, but from tomorrow we will resume classes in the evening so that I finish the syllabus on time.
Yes, sir. We
Yeah,
will finish it by 10, sir, or we'll have classes in the holidays also, the preparation holidays.
I would like to finish by 10th.
Okay.
I would like to finish by 10th. That is my goal. But just in case something is left over, just in case, then we'll have 1 or 2 classes in the preparation holidays. Okay,
Yes, sir.
so yeah, but the goal is to try and finish off by the last date so that you're not put through this terrible thing. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So just leave me for today. I'm completely out of shape. I don't know. Did I make any sense today?
Yes, sir, you did.
Because
Yeah.
my mind has been so much on pain that I was wondering if I made any sense at all. And yesterday I sat like this for 4 hours, and that has made it worse. So today I'll take 1 day off in the evening, and tomorrow we start 2 classes so that we can finish the syllabus on time for both papers. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
Thank you very much.
Yeah. See you tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Thank
See
you.
you tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank
sir.
you.
Rest well
Thank
and
you.
take care.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye, sir.
Bye.